Hi, friends. Welcome to Technical Assistance Live, TA Live with RMTC-DHH. I am Candace McIntyre. I am a deaf education and training specialist with the Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And I am joined here today with Janelle Berry from the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind, who will be talking about bilingual strategies. So I'm going to hand it over to her. Hi, Janelle. Welcome.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I am Janelle Berry. I'm a bilingual specialist here at FSDB, Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. I've been working here for some time now. So before we begin, I wanted to share a little bit about myself so you're understanding where I'm coming from. I was born in the Virgin Islands. The deaf community there is very, very small. There are no deaf schools there at all. My family still lives there, still to this day, but I did move to Maryland and I went to Maryland School for the Deaf, graduated there, to Gallaudet, went through a bunch of different educational journeys at college. I graduated with my BA and then moved here to I started working in the dorms overnight and transitioned to a few different roles over time. And I realized the ASL specialist role is where I want to be. I wanted to go back to school for my master's to teach ASL. So that's my position where I'm at. And maybe I'll stay here till I retire. We shall see. But that's a little bit more about me. And I'm ready to dive into the bilingual strategies. I have a strong belief that ASL and English are equal languages. And I'll talk about that all the way throughout this presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, before we begin, I would like you guys to have some comments in the chat. If you could go ahead and type up a description about a time or two that you communicated across languages, whether it be signed, written, spoken, or otherwise, that helped you succeed. So maybe 30 seconds to a minute, just go ahead and take this opportunity to write this in the chat and share. Making sure I can see the chat. All right, I'm not seeing much. Does anyone have some comments? Okay. Gesturing, beautiful. Pointing and gesturing can help. I'm looking at the other responses. Great. Thank you guys so much for sharing your input. It's really important to find ways to communicate, whether it be Google Translate, gestures, all of that is beautiful. Some of you know ASL. I met a family who knows ASL, perfect. Captions as well to help you learn. Fantastic. All right, thank you for your response. So now go ahead and take a minute to write any questions that you're thinking about, any burning questions that you want answered, because I do have a frequently asked questions slide at the end. If you realize your question is not there or I didn't add a question that you have the answer to, we can reach out through email later if time runs out, but go ahead at this moment, send any burning questions you have. Just take a minute or two to send any questions. I'll wait about like 30 more seconds just to see if anyone has some questions. All right, we'll go ahead on to the next slide. So I wanted to pose the question, why does bilingualism matter in education? I mean, we know, we are aware of why it's important, but it's good to reemphasize this. Working with deaf and hard of hearing students, ASL and English are both very important. So that tree picture, go ahead and ignore that for the moment. I'll explain it soon. But here's the purpose of bilingual education. ASL and English are equal. One does not outweigh the other in importance. Our goal is to make sure that both ASL and English are offered equally and both accessible all the way throughout a student's education. And this is a clarifying statement. For deaf and hard of hearing students in general, ASL should be a priority language. English is usually their second language, whether it be written or spoken. ASL can provide a foundation for language, and if there's no ASL foundation as their L1, their first language, that means their L2 or second language will be weak. So it's important that we really focus on making sure that we have a strong ASL foundation. If the ASL foundation is set, the English will follow. So I see it around very often. Many people are worried and concerned about teaching English first, and that's really not the best technique. We don't want to set up our students for failure when we're only focusing on teaching English first. English is very vital, of course, but we should be focusing on ASL first, making sure they understand the ASL language fully and how to apply it to English. So that tree image, I'll go ahead and describe that now. You can see the roots of the tree. A tree can't grow without roots, right? Roots in this picture symbolize ASL, and the tree itself represents English. If there's no roots, no ASL, the tree can't grow and thrive. It'll struggle. And as a human, they'll feel frustrated without having that foundation. So we should be reprioritizing ASL exposure until they understand it and can apply ASL to English. Now, I'm curious, have you guys heard of BICS before? Before I show you the answer, I want to see in the chat who has known what BICS is, B-I-C-S. B-I-C-S, BICS. Does anyone know? Some do know, some don't know. But what does it stand for? Can anyone explain what the acronym means? Right, the chat says basic interpersonal communication something. Yes, that is close, yes. Basic interpersonal conversational language skills. So really, that does specifically mean before you're in a classroom academic setting, BICS is a language we use to socialize and to learn, usually in the home, in the dorm, outside, during play, during lunch, anywhere where we are socializing and chatting with peers or family. That is. The next word is CALP, the next acronym, CALP, C-A-L-P. Does anyone know what that expansion is? Anyone know what CALP means? C-A-L-P. Someone said no, don't know. Okay, that's more than fine. We're learning something new today. That's great. All right, so this is CALP, Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency. So this is the academic language we use in a classroom for learning. So how do we connect the two? I'll expand more on that in this presentation. So we do want to focus on BICS first. I'm curious if anybody has any ideas on why we prioritize BICS first. If you'd like to answer in the chat. Because CALP is academic, focusing in the classroom. And BICS is the language you get exposed to from birth all the way till you're older, in the home, in the dorm. Why would we focus on that first? Does anyone want to put an answer in the chat? No, someone asked these language skills are used more often. Okay, possibly. It's the first language and serves as a basic base language. Develops a foundation of language. Beautiful answers. Yes, many of you guys are on the right track. Absolutely. BICS really does start from birth, when you are a baby. People in your family, parents signing or speaking to you, that's the language you get in the home. And then you go to school, and at a deaf school, you'd be in the dorm and chatting with students and having full-on conversations in sign language. That's BICS. But a lot of our students don't have that. Maybe their home life, they don't have people signing in their life, and it's not their fault. They just don't have the access to the language that they need. So there might be some gaps in that language foundation. So when they get to school, it feels overwhelming. How do those students start to learn the academic language if they don't even have a casual language to use? So all of this applies to background knowledge. That has to be prioritized first. It'll help our students learn academically. So BICS and language development benefits. It provides confidence and identity. Yes, confidence and identity. That can help students really build up their ability to socialize, help them feel confident in themselves. They'll have good self-esteem, helps them feel included with peers and in their community. If they are dismissed by their peers, they might not have a fully formed identity, feeling like they don't understand or don't relate with their peers. But once they get the foundation of that language, they are able to communicate. If they don't have access to signs, they might feel left out, and their identity could suffer. We have to make sure we are helping them find their identity and make sure their confidence is strong by providing that first language. I jumped ahead, no worries. Foundation for CALP. So BICS, again, we want to develop first at the first 1 or 2 years of life. That helps set up the good foundation to apply CALP skills later. That usually takes around 5 to 7 years to develop the CALP academic language, which is longer, but also very vital for academic success. It's very necessary. Without BICS, CALP will not be as successful as it could be. So if you have a student who doesn't understand things academically, that might mean they have a gap in their foundation when it comes to BICS. Something to keep in mind. Next is cultural integration. Again, language helps our students navigate their world and their everyday lives. Maybe if they're ordering food or having to navigate in the food store or chatting with friends. All of that is very vital for experiencing different environments. So it's really important to have that inner confidence and understanding. Students learn BICS by viewing and watching and learning how to interact with others. And they can pick up different skills that they can then apply to more complex situations and different structures. And last, obviously, is the motivation to learn. When your communication is thriving, students will continue to want to participate and learn more language and get more exposure, especially in the academic realm. So later, they can thrive when they go to work or college or experience anything postgraduate. They can feel like they have that confidence and that identity to do things successfully. And all of that relates to this language foundation. We want them to feel motivated through elementary, middle, high school, and the rest of their lives. If they're struggling and feeling frustrated, they might feel like, oh, there's no motivation. I feel like I need a breakdown. It's all a learning process about language. Okay, so for cognitive development with CALP, some of the benefits to that. So some of this abstract type of thinking, they'll be able to develop that skill and be able to learn. And the students can say, oh, I can handle the academics. I can handle these different concepts, such as maybe photosynthesis or justice, things of that nature. So it's very abstract types of concepts. So you need to be able to learn certain things, and you need to have a foundation in BIC first with ASL and that foundation. Without that interpersonal communication, everything else will kind of overwhelm the students and go right over their head for the academic learning. For metalinguistic awareness as well as the benefit, so they start to understand the language aspect. Their foundation, remember, is BIC, and then it bleeds over into CALP of what does that mean and what is that language, and diving deep into that and helping them be able to develop and be successful linguistically. Also with problem solving and critical thinking skills. So CALP is required, and to apply that to analysis skills, discussions, being able to explain something, that from BIC can also bleed over into CALP in these cognitive and critical thinking type of skills. Without ASL first as the primary language, again, it always goes back to ASL. That is necessary to be able to be successful in an academic classroom while they learn in English with that type of instruction. Also with their long-term memory, that's a benefit as well. So again, being able to store things in your long-term memory and memorize certain things for a test or for a writing assignment, and being able to have that professional conversation. Without BICS, BICS, they'll be all over the place with their communication. So again, we think back to having ASL and that foundational language first, and then their English skills will be able to thrive. All right, again, I'm emphasizing, and I know some of you are looking at me like, I know, but BICS will be first, and then CALP will develop, having that strong ASL primary language, and then they'll be able to develop English and those English skills. So again, ASL will be the primary language, and we're not going to throw that to the wayside and focus on English primarily. There will be a lot of loss and some issues and struggles without that primary language of ASL being a strong foundation. And then again, those English skills will be able to be acquired. Okay. So again, the foundations of ASL English, bilingualism, being able to support these students and providing them with full access. And what that pretty much means is showing them a lot of pictures, those visuals, using the signs, videos, all of these things that they can see and watch to have this correlation and these connections from their brain and more exposure. So more exposure earlier on in life means, again, they'll have strong literacy skills. So then again, if they have a future career, that'll be able to apply to that as well. I jumped ahead just a little bit, but again, always making sure that there are visuals, not having an empty blank classroom or environment. I am a deaf person, and of course, we're very visual people in nature. So we need to see things like your classroom. If it's empty, there's nothing on the wall, that's a perfect time to go ahead and have those visuals for the students to really understand and envision and have these brain connections and stimulations of their brain, what they're seeing in their environment. Also encouraging early on communication. Some families, again, it's not their fault. However, some families don't know what to do with a deaf child, a deaf baby. They just don't know what to do in that moment. And I do understand that, I do, but encouraging them to sign no matter what, trying to sign with their deaf child And then again, they'll be able to acquire language faster and later on in life. When they start to enter school in the schooling system, that's you and our responsibility to, again, encourage them to really catch up as much as we can and pull them up academically as much as we can with that encouragement. So again, talking about literacy skills, reading and writing academically, to be able to be successful in the future, again, they must have that strong ASL foundation to be able to communicate, to be able to comprehend, ask clarifying questions, be able to list and use features of ASL, and then be able to apply that to writing and other literacy skills later on. It will be a struggle if they don't have that strong foundation first. So as you can see, this visual up here, Scarborough, as you can see, we have with the rope and that visual up there, the deaf reading rope. So Scarborough, the reading rope. Again, you can see it intertwining with it itself, the rope. So the rope, again, means and symbolizes that strong foundational language. And how can it intertwine with other parts and other strands of language without that foundation and primary language first? So they have to acquire that ASL first to be able to acquire English skills at the same time, and then they can intertwine and make those connections between ASL English to then make, again, those strands, connections, and more fluency with their language skills. Again, when there is one rope or one strand that seems to be a little weaker in nature, and then there's another rope there as well, it can hold on and basically anchor that other rope to really work in concordance with each other to start to have this fluid learning process as a rope would be if it was intertwined. And that's what will happen throughout the future. Again, the point of this rope up here showing the strands intertwining with each other is, again, those linguistics, language skills, making sure that they have the literacy skills, of course, with the English print, but ASL and English being able to acquire at the same time, those strands can then, quote unquote, support each other with the ASL and English since they are equivalent languages. So being able to focus on language acquisition first, of course, there are different skills that intertwine with each other, but developing that strong foundational language first will then make fluid communication with English later on. I'm trying to look at the time, making sure we're cognizant of that. So I do have 4 videos. Depending on time, of course, we'll see if we can go through each one, and then we can go ahead and discuss. We can stop about halfway. And then, again, it's a teacher describing what they're doing in an activity with the classroom. So go ahead and watch. Okay. Everybody ready? Okay, so what did you all notice? I'm just looking at the comments here. Okay, so what did you notice from the video with the teacher and the student in that lesson? What did you notice? Go ahead, feel free to jot it down in the comment section. I'm looking at the comments. Yes, correct. Beautiful responses. Yes, yes. But okay. Okay. All right. So again, I'm looking at the comments here. Yes, the repetition over and over again. Sometimes we often assume they understand the first time, but that's not always the case. So again, making sure that we do and then, or I do, and then you do, and again, that back and forth, that exposure, reiteration, great. Okay, then I will show this second video now as well. So this one's 6 minutes. However, I feel it's important since there's some visuals in there and you will enjoy it. Oh, I forgot also to mention.
This is a 3-period lesson. It is a simple and concise way to provide the children new information, practice concepts, and to check for understanding. Period 1. Presentation of concept. Explain different animals, shapes, colors. It doesn't matter, any subject can be used. Period 2 is practice. Where is, give me, point at, gives the student an opportunity to practice. Period 3 asks what. What's that? What's that over there? Student demonstrates understanding and mastery of the skill by being able to name things. This strategy can be used for everything in the classroom. It is easy to teach by following the 3 periods. It is simple and concise, from teaching vocabulary, naming animals, math, science, and reading. It's for everything. This is an easy way to teach new concepts, practice concepts, and check for understanding. It is simple.
So the teacher's description of that lesson. Okay, so again, what are everybody's thoughts? For those of you who can see the video, what are your thoughts on the teacher's explanation of that type of lesson? Okay, that's okay. We can continue. So again, with that video, it is really crucial to make sure that you go through all 3 periods of that lesson with understanding of the skill that's being taught. Like I did mention before, oftentimes we might overlook something or assume they get it, but that's not always the case. So it's, again, important to ask the question, make sure they understand, especially what you're teaching in that moment in the lesson. The second video is 6 minutes long. However, I do think it's a good video. Everybody ready? Hopefully all of you can see it. So I'm curious about your thoughts on what you just saw are. If you'd like to type in the chat again. Giggling at the comment. Happy to see it now. So go ahead and throw in some answers in the chat of what you feel about and think about what you just saw in this second video. No responses yet. I'm not sure if they're not going through or that's fine, no worries. I wanted to talk about student-centered approaches. The goal is to have the students kind of lead the activities instead of the teacher lecturing the entire time during class. I mean, students, right, it gives the students autonomy. Yes, the students should be participating and interacting with the lesson. We should be asking the students, what do you think? They should be asking each other, what do you think? Because again, that comes back to this. We have to kind of hold off on the academics and make sure that the students are comfortable expressing their thoughts and feelings with each other so that they feel connected. And that's really, really important. And as the teacher, at the end of the lesson, you can review and pose questions to the students before going ahead with the next lesson. So it's a good breakdown with more activities that are student-centered. So I'll let you watch what the teacher in that video describes that lesson.
For this lesson, I use the student-centered approach. I start by providing a context or a reason for learning. I review all the previously learned information with my students. My students have been studying the American Revolutionary War. If you want to introduce a new unit using the same approach, I recommend providing some background content for learning to give the students a reason for learning. Maybe you could provide some background picture or some other story or explanation. You need to provide a reason for the students to become hooked. Next, I show them an artifact. For this lesson, I used a painting about a historical event, George Washington crossing the Delaware River. Also, you could provide an actual artifact or a replica of an artifact. You could provide a tool, clothing, or food. Anything that can relate to the lesson. Whether it's pictures, photographs, it can be anything. You need to allow time for students to interact with the artifact. The interaction could be drawing, copying, analyzing. It could be a variety of different activities. For this lesson, my students were informed that they would have to draw a sketch of what they saw. They will copy the same painting that is projected on the board. The students will analyze as they draw. Also, you can ask the students to predict what would happen next, or guess how to use that artifact. If you have an actual object for the students to look at instead of a picture, students can manipulate, observe, and analyze the object. You could allow time for that, but remember, you want students to analyze for details. Drawing is a really good way to encourage students to analyze the content. At this point, you can use the student-centered approach. I use what the students have observed and identified from the picture. I guide the discussion based on their observations. Students take turns showing their drawing to each other. As they show their drawing, I point out cool, unique details that I noticed in each of the students' drawings. Each drawing will be different. It's really cool to share their different artwork that they're proud of. Then select specific details that you want to discuss. Do you really want your lesson to pop? you can use a whiteboard or a white piece of paper. Place the whiteboard over a specific part of the picture and pull it out to make it pop. Whatever details the students notice, you find on the painting and enlarge it. By pulling it out, the students can focus on the specific detail. That allows for in-depth discussion and helps students who may have overlooked important details before. Next, you need to clarify any of the information that students might have misstated, misunderstood, vague information, or information they don't fully comprehend. As the teacher, you need to clarify or explain further. Next, provide the historical context for that picture. By discussing any symbols that may show up in the picture. Sometimes it's not an actual fact, but it represents something else. You can ask what the artist's perspective is. Did they provide their opinion? Is there bias? The picture encourages different discussions. Help students start making connections before starting the next lesson.
Okay, so in that video, if you notice, she mentioned background knowledge. And again, that starts with ASL, with BICS, and all that can then be related to CALP and academics. I wanted to discuss more about growing up. People were like, yeah, you can sign. How do you have that language? But honestly, my reading levels at that time were not the best. I did not love to read. I didn't like to read. But now I'm an avid reader. I grew up in the dorm at a deaf school. So I would watch staff, teachers. I would see their conversations. And I was nosy. I'm not going to lie. I was nosy. I love to watch their interactions and their conversations. And I'd be like, oh, is that true? They commented about that. Is that true? And they'd be like, go play with your friends. Go do your homework. But I was fascinated by that interaction. And that's what helped me learn. I was able to see those interactions and then connect it academically. So still today, I remember that. Seeing people chatting and chatting and chatting, even though they did always try to redirect me, I wanted to be a part of that conversation because I was actively learning. So now, today, it's nobody's fault at all, but in the classroom, students want to raise their hand. They want to comment using their background knowledge and explain about their life. And some teachers do dismiss that and say, oh, I know, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. And I understand why. You guys have many standards. You have to meet time limits. I understand. However, if those students can't comment and apply their background knowledge, it's really tough to really have that relationship with that student. It's really essential to their learning that you are attentive to their background knowledge and how they apply it. So as a teacher, you should have those conversations to apply academics. So seeing what they learn, what they comment on in their real lives, if you say, that's what I'm talking about, that's how it applies to this academic lesson, that's how they'll learn. So you might have to block out some time for that conversation to happen, not academic or instructional time, maybe even just 5 minutes for students to just chat, and then they'll thrive when you relate that chat to the academic topic. That's providing structure, or no structure, you're just letting them chat, and learning is still happening. So teachers can say, remember when you said this about your life? That applies to this lesson. It helps make that connection for that student, and it helps them develop their academic learning even more. I'm checking on the time. Maybe we have time for one more video. They're all good. They're all good, but I'll pick one more that we can watch together. Before we see the explanation, what did you notice from that clip? Just quickly, what did you notice? Listening to students' input. And I like the iPad that they use to show her self-signing, and it'll help her when viewing it back, kind of analyze her signing and how to become even better when they're presenting in the future. So often, I mean, me included, often just in general, we might look at a comment and see other comments around us. Okay. Look at something and comment on it. So that was a great example of what the teacher was doing in that lesson, and we'll see the teacher's comments now.
I'm going to discuss my signed reading fluency rubric. The rubric is really cool because it helps students self-analyze their own read-aloud skills. Also, it's my opportunity to discuss with my students. The rubric can be shared with the parents so they can see their child's read-aloud skills. I developed that rubric after inspiration from the signed reading fluency rubric. I adapted the rubric to make it more child-friendly, so I can use it with my students for discussion. I sit with my students about once a week and set up the iPad. The student hits record and reads aloud their story of the week. When they finish reading the story, we discuss their read-aloud skills. The rubric includes clarity of signs. Did the child sign clear? Pacing. Did the child's speed match the story? Conceptual signs. Did they sign conceptually accurate? For example, can, like a soup can, and can, able to, which is appropriate. Reading tone, did your child use appropriate facial expressions that match the story's characters? Body movement, did the student use appropriate role shifting to represent the characters? Sign space, did the student have clear signing space around them? This reading tool supports goal setting for the child, also increases the student's self-awareness, and empowers the students to take control over their own learning.
All right. That was a very interesting video. The student can see themselves from the very beginning to the end and see their sign production improve. Their comprehension for reading is getting better. They're chunking the information. All of it is very positive learning for that child. So I encourage you to research more on that, and I'll share some resources at the end for you guys to look at. And please do contact me for anything you would need. Since time is running out, we'll keep moving along. So I did show a few videos, but there's even more that I can share out with you guys. So more bilingual strategies and putting them into practice. I want to help you guys collaborate because some schools you might be working alone. Some of you might not know what to do. Maybe there are other people, or maybe I'm only working with one deaf child. It's important to have a network of teachers all over who are willing and happy to collaborate with you. Reach out to any ASL specialists, interpreters, and I would like to emphasize interpreters do have their own roles to facilitate conversations and communication. But if there's no child in the room and you wanted to talk about the learning aspect, you could. But the point is, you do have people you could collaborate with. I know I wanted to emphasize the environment being visual and labeling in the classroom with pictures, words, all of that will help. Viewing of sign language around the room would be also very important. Having a role model. I've noticed comments around saying that many teachers of the deaf or teachers in general work alone with deaf students, but I encourage you to look online. There are many deaf role models online that you can show your students, and it'll help your students say, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only deaf person here. There's other deaf adults who can help me find my identity. It'll help that student feel better about themselves. And that will also help with their inner identity when finding deaf culture. I'm trying to rush along, time's running out. So I'll summarize some frequently asked questions very briefly, very quickly. If your question that you had at the beginning is not there, please do email me and reach out, okay? So the first one being, what does bilingual education mean for deaf and hard of hearing students? It's using both languages and having full access to communication and literacy with both English and ASL. Why is it recommended to have bilingual education? Well, ASL is a full visual language, and English can support that when it comes to literacy and spoken communication. Next, does ASL interfere with spoken English? No, research has proved that ASL does not impede on spoken English at all. It only supports English development. When should bilingual exposure begin? Day one. As a baby, expose as much as you can on the first day. Some families don't always know what to do. If they enter a deaf school, they might get all of the information that they can get based off of language model. What is language deprivation? Lack of full language access early in life. And exposing a deaf child to ASL will only help prevent that. What are some common bilingual strategies? Chaining, sandwiching, preview, view, review, code switching, visual scaffolds, and many more.
All right, talking about curricular implants and being able to use those, is that possible benefit to bilingual strategies? It could be, yes, but if something then breaks and their hearing aid, a curricular implant breaks, they don't have the ASL language foundation, then again, they can kind of code switch and not always use English and rely on that. They could switch over to ASL. So what is translingualing? And so that's student flexibility, use ASL and English together for learning and using both. So again, bilingualism can look different in different settings and in other places. Again, sometimes other people and professionals might collaborate, but again, collaboration is key in different strategies for working together, but this is for primary and primarily focusing on deaf, hard of hearing population. Families can support bilingualism by going ahead and reading books with their children, having visuals, and again, having communication. If they aren't the best and don't have full ASL foundational language, again, gesture, use what you know, use what you can. If you have a home language that isn't English, that is fine. Go ahead and use the language you use in the home, your native language, and then add that ASL and English later on. So then the students who have 3 are trilingual, there's again going to be no interference with their acquisition of English, having another language in the home. Bilingualism does support literacy. Having that foundation of ASL first, they'll be able to understand narratives, words, vocabulary, and so forth with literacy skills. Also, is spoken language encouraged? Again, it's not outlawed, it's not banned. You don't have to exclude speech. That can be included as well. Interpreters and the role that they play, of course, you know, if the teacher is hearing and they can't provide that access, having an interpreter, and that's the role of having them there. So the child has that access to communication of what is being taught. Again, how is progress assessed? So there are ASL assessments out there to make sure that the standards and everything is being developed with their literacy skills. So there are different ASL assessments that are out there for academic skill assessment. So there are challenges that do exist, a lack of bilingual teachers. Sometimes they have a deaf student, the teacher has no idea what to do. To this day, it is still a struggle in the classroom. There are some myths about ASL as well, saying, oh, well, deaf people can't drive. Oh, please, come on. There are those things out there, but these myths do exist. So again, exposing children at a young age, as a baby at birth, to the different things that they need to know out there in the world, exposing to them and being consistent in what you're exposing them to. Again, there's not enough training for the people out there, however, that's why there's myths. So educators can, of course, find different strategies. You have the Clerk Center, you have NAD, FSDB, You have different deaf ed programs all over the country. There are resources out there. So again, I jumped ahead just a little bit, sorry. However, there are a list of resources that you can check out on your own. Again, if you aren't sure where to look or where to start, feel free to reach out to me. Again, so there's also finger spelling your way to reading. There is many different fluency, there's signed fluency rubrics. There's different curriculums for deaf children, the BGC, bilingual grammar curriculum. We have ASL assessments, as I mentioned, there are several, but I must be a member of that website, however. So again, making sure there's those expressive and receptive assessments that helps with data to know where the students are at currently. There's those assessments as well. If you do want to know more and you do have questions, again, as I mentioned, feel free to email me and reach out to me. Okay, all right. All right, that is the end. That is wrapping it up. Are there any other questions?
Hey, Janelle, thank you so much. That was so good. There was a question in the chat that I wanted to get your feedback on. Someone asked, what are some ways itinerant teachers can support ASL English bilingual strategies, especially when they don't have an ASL specialist? So those itinerant teachers who might be only be seeing a kid who once a week or twice a week.
Oh, that is a tough one. Yes, it is quite a tough journey, I would say. Just really try your best to try to have those interactions. And I would say also strategize with the school, with the student, and saying, hey, they need more than just once or twice a week, or however often you do see the student. It is tough, as I did mention, but you can contact me, and again, we can have an in-depth discussion, and I can give you some more ideas on that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Again, if there are any questions, please feel free to send them to me, email me. I will share them with Candace, or you guys can as well, and then it'll reach me, and then I can be able to answer that for you.
Thank you, Janelle. All right, I'm gonna start sharing my screen real fast so that I can get everyone's the info on next month and the evaluation. So, all
Sure.
right.
Do you need me to click out of
I
my
got
share?
it. Nope, you're good. All
Okay.
right. All right. So next month we have Dr. Aliette Alfano and Daniela Barrios Reyes joining us on supporting multilingual children who are deaf and hard of hearing. That will be the first week that we're back, the first Wednesday from January 7th. So please join us then. And here's the evaluation form. We take your feedback seriously and we love hearing your feedback. So if you could fill out our evaluation form for us, we are a IDEA funded state project. So all of our services that we provide are free for you all. And so all of your feedback helps support us and the need that you guys have for continuing our work. And my friends are going to drop that link in the chat for me. And then also a certificate of completion for your 1 hour. Make sure that everything that you type is what is going to pop up on your evaluation. So your name, you spell it, make sure it's spelled correctly. And then for the title, today's title is TA Live ASL/English Bilingual Strategies. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there's any other last minute questions. Someone asked, is this in the live binder? There's not going to be a live binder for this, but we will be posting it on our website. So we will have all of our recordings will be posted to our website. So you can check back. We have to edit the video and make sure everything's all good, and we'll post it to our website when it's all completed and captioned. All right. Lots of people saying thank you, Janelle, and thank you so much. This was awesome. Thank y'all, and thank you to our interpreters for joining us as well. We appreciate you guys. And have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. Thank you.
You as well. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.